As I say, it's as simple as all that. Okay, good. Okay, let's get going.
You have to say the date first.
Yeah, so today is Yud Zayin, or well, Yud Ches, Mar Cheshvan, Shin Samach Ches, Hemshchaim Beis, Omid Kerech Aleph, Omid Tov Kof Aleph, beginning of Dibur HaMashgul, Hallelujah Hashem Kol Goyim. So we saw that Hallelujah Hashem Kol Goyim, and this is a pasuk in the Hallel. Shabachuhu Kol Ha'umim, the pasuk says further, and then it says Ki Govar Aleinu Chazdoi, because the Eibishter's Chesed has been tremendously strong upon us, Govar Aleinu. And then the pasuk finishes with Ve'emas Havai Alielam Hallelujah. The Chodik Lahovin Mahu Anasinus Tam, the Ki Govar Aleinu Chazdoi, the Mishum Zeh Hallelujah Hashem Kol Goyim. The key is a Anasinus Tam. All the Goyim should praise the Eibishter because the Eibishter's chesed upon us has been tremendous. And upon us simply seems to be referring to Yidden. So that's what the Rebbe says. Yeah, what sort of an Anasinus Tam is it because the Eibishter was so tremendously Goiver chesed upon Yidden, therefore all the Goyim should praise him. Yeah, and he says, Ayin zeh tam mashpik al zeh. That's an interesting lashon, Ayin zeh tam mashpik, meaning that maybe it could be a tam, but it doesn't seem to be a tam mashpik. In other words, maybe the Goyim will notice that the Eibush is very kind to Yidden, he's been very kind to them. And they'll pay attention and they'll say, wow, this is really something. But hallelu means that they really go out of their kelim in a form of praise to him. Particularly that we see that the pasuk doubles it. There's a kafila saloshin, hallelujah Hashem kol goyim, shabachuhu kol ha'umim, ki govar aleinu chazdoi. Well, it's very interesting that mamish bezmanenu zeh, there's a me'ein mizo, dover doimel zeh, titzat bekivon ha'ofuch. And that is that we see that whenever there's talk about giving away Eretz HaKodesh or their pu'ulas, taken about Rachmanin and Klan being Mavater on Eretz HaKodesh to Rotzchim, to gangsters, and to Goyim, even if they were good Goyim, it would be bad enough. And the Americans really put their foot into it and push that Indian, and they get into the most terrible trouble. I mean, there's been a fire over there. Have you heard about it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't hear the news at all, except what I just pick up from people. And I rely on, most probably on my sharpness of mind to put things together a little too much, because I don't really hear the details sometimes. But there's been a huge, unbelievably massive fire in the west coast of America, which has burnt for several days, absolutely beyond any possibility to put it out. And 1 million people have been homeless. 1 million. I mean, that's a lot of people have been made homeless, and thousands of buildings have been just wiped out in the west coast in California. Yeah. It's just the last few days. It was not this week, but last week.
And take it from Miyad, they should see the reason why. And
Miyad, to the fact that they start kvetching about, you must give this back, you must give that back, you must do this, you must do that. And Ayin puts the only person I think is Shon Wolfer. I heard that he has tried to make some statement directly to the Nazi Bush himself, saying, listen here, man, you see that you get yourself into endless trouble. Why don't you wake up and start making the connection? That's why I hear he gave out a message. But the amazing thing is that over here, Ayin puts it tough to Cain as a goal, because they're all, it's not nice in front of Karen to say things which are not complimentary. But anyway, let's say that's a form of Ayin Lahefer. Hallelujah Hashem Kol Goyim, Ki Gover Aleinu Chazdei. It's so great as a chesed of the Eibishter to Yidden that give what you guys get yourself into. I don't know, it's going to bring them immediately to Hallelujah Hashem Kol Goyim. But anyway, it's me ain't this. Therefore, Gover Aleinu Chazdei is the Pirush Begolui. There'll be a tremendous Iskabras of chesed on Yidden. So therefore the Rebbe said there's not enough time why all the Goyim should mamish be misoyer l'mayla mikol keileihem l'shabeach l'foyer l'halal as in from Elikud. And so therefore he says ein shetam maspik al zeh. I think there should be one. No, I took the one from up there. But there was another one up there, an old one. It's not there.
Yeah, that's one
That's one you got. Yeah, unfortunately, I do have an iron base in my my room, but I didn't bring it. What's that? Is that an iron base over there?
No, this is a Chumash.
All right, here's a subtle commentary. Mahu inyan hahilul v'ashivach shalehem. What is the inyan of their praise and their going out in the form of hilul on the part of the Goyim? Gam tzarich lovin mahu shebechag haSukkos ikrivu ayin porim neged ayin shorim. That's an abbreviation. Referring to the mokia of the Goyim, Lamaila the ayin shorim. Mahu inyan hakrova zeis, or mipnei ma bechag haSukkos. Why was it Davkir? So when I get to the main kasha, why is it that Ki Gover Aleinu Chazdei, that should be an Asinas Tam of Hallelujah Hashem Kol Goyim? It's interesting that Rashi immediately, if you look out there in the Pasuk, Rashi immediately notices that, and he immediately warns the Shaila. Rashi says Kaloima. Now it's very rare. Well, it's not rare, but it's not on every passage does Rashi say Kaloima. It's following in Shas the same meaning. The way Rashi says Kaloima, then he's warning you a kasha which he expects that has obviously occurred to you. And when he says Kaloima, he's like correcting you the kasha. That's an old Klavin Shas. And so it's the same in the But in the Chumash, I don't know so much because it's rather rare that he says Kaloima in the Chumash. Over there on this pasuk, where it's written Ki Gover Aleinu Chazdei, Rashi says Kaloima, Af Ki Gover Aleinu Chazdei Yahalalu. So Rashi's warned it, and he says that even though the chesed of these Gavrus HaChesed is to Yidden, nonetheless, the Goyim will also praise him. In other words, that there'll be a tremendous praise, even though they're not getting the Chesed. The Yidden are getting the Chesed. They will pray. So Rashi's felt the Kasha. I mean, he hasn't answered the Kasha, but Tuichen HaPnimi, Lama Zeh, what sort of Chesed would cause as Ayinim by the Goyim, but at least he's put it right. And he says, even though that Chesed is already Yidden, nonetheless it'll call out a Shabbat by the Goyim. So it's very interesting to notice that Rashi immediately on the spot. But there's a very fascinating Radak over there. And the interesting thing is that this is a kapitel in Tilim, which is only two psukim. Kapitel Kuf Yud Ayin, and it's just those two psukim. Hallelujah Hashem Goyim Shabchu Kol Ha'umim Ki Gover Aleinu Chazdei Ve'emes Hashem Le'elam Hallelujah. That's the whole capital. This is the answer. So the Dax is over there that it's referring to the time of the Geula. It's referring to the time of the Geulus Mashiach. Yes, Melech Mashiach. So that's what Lashon. And he says that then it will be Hallelujah Hashem Kol Goyim Ki Gova Aleinu Chasdei, because there'll be the Inif and the Gula to Yidna, that will call, and it'll be in such a pure in such a Ishkabrus, a Gili Elikus, with the Sipuklo, the Sinyan HaChesed. And therefore the Goyim will all go out of their Kalim and they'll all be this. And he says, Ki V'emes Havai Ki Gova Aleinu Chasdei, and he says, V'emes Havai Li'olam, that then everybody will see that they have Tocha, what the Eibishter made, that he would take Yidden out of the Golas, has in effect become true. As I stated, V'emes Havai Li'olam. In other words, that the Eibishter made that out Tocha hundreds, thousands of years ago. He promised that there would be this Indian. It took a long time. It was like almost an Eibikizach. Obviously, the emes of the Eibishter holds out, and there's in effect been the Indian of the Gula. See, they stay taught in the Radach. He learns of Mamish Mufurish. And if I'm not mistaken, he says, Shnei Psuki Meile, Medavrim Iskalis Mashiachein. They stay taught. Pele. So in that general theme, and Beyachadim Zeis is the well-known cloud that the Ayin Porim that were offered in the Musafim of Sukkot, they add up to 70. It's one on the first day 13, the second day 12, and so all of them together add up to Ayin Porim, that they're connected the Ayin Shivim Umas. And here it's interesting, the Rebbe says that they're connected the Ayin Sorim. He uses the Rosh Tevis Ayin Sorim in Pashtas. What that refers to the Mokeh of the Goyim, not so much the Goyim Haraya Mamish Lamata. And it's brought down in the Medrash, a whole Indian at the Goyim, if they would have known what those Ayin Porim did for them, how much it was mamshik to them, shefa, v'kol ha'inyonim afilu b'gashmiyusam, and they would have put legiones shel chayil, called legions of army around the Beis Hamikdash to protect it, and they would never have dreamt of destroying it, if they would have only known what the Ayin Porim in Sukkot did for them. They stay taught in the Medrash. What is the union of this akrova of the Ayin Porim, and what's it got to do with the Shurish of the Goyim, the Ayin Sorim, and what's it got to do with Chag HaSukkos Davki? Why was that akrova Davki b'Sukkos?
And what's it got to do with the posuk?
Huh?
What's it got to do with the posuk?
Well, you see, this posuk Hallelujah Hashem Kol Goyim Ki Gova Aleinu. I see what's got to do Davki with this posuk. Well, the Maimon said on Chol HaMoed Sukkot. In other words, Hallel is said not only on Pesach, it's also said on Shavuos, it's also on Sukkot. If I made it, there's a posik in the Hallel which is said on Sukkot. So that was said that since the Klolos Hallel is Nogea to Goyim, it's Nogea to Goyim, and on the contrary, the pashtus of the pasuk is that the Goyim will do the praising. So therefore the Rebbe said that on Chag HaSukkos there was a special amshochet to Goyim. In other words, since the whole Hallel is their Inyan, therefore he happens to mention, when I say the whole Hallel, that particular Inyan Godel in the Hallel. Therefore he brings it on Chag HaSukkos there was a special Inyan of that Shevach V'hilu to Goyim. להבין זה צורך להקדים תחילה מה שנסבור ליהו שיש בייס מדרגס בחוכמס תימוה. We saw that there were two inyanim in Klolos Moichas Timoa or Chochmas Timoa, and they were connected with what we saw, that there was one inyan in Chochmas Timoa which was and that's what we're going to talk more about. It was shot to Cyrus, to Amshocha B'Dar Cyrus, and then there was an Indian Pnimi V'Atzmi in Moichas Timoa that it was Mamish Pnimisatik. It was Shedavki Boy Mislabish Pnimius Atik, but that was mashma that it was mudal and mufrash liatzmai. So we saw that those two beginners in Moiches Timor, that they were the Indian of in Chochmas Timor, they were Chitenius and Pnimius, who Indian Machiv Doer Yoshua, Machiv Doer Choizer. We saw that Machiv Doer Yoshua is also an Indian from Stima, it's an Indian from Machiv, but it was only Sosum Rach Legabi HaMakablim. Ach, Ubchina Shaychus Lehem. And Shaychus Lehem means that Sof Koso, it'll be miskaret to them. And not only just a ha'ora, but it'll be miskaret to them b'shleimusi, b'melueh. And we saw that was the whole union of Achrei Abo and Shnin, and the Koiminish, v'chulo. And Bamira, even though b'tchilas hashpoah, and mitzad Rav, how he's mishachas to the Talmud b'tchila, then it's a union from Soso, Stimos. But it's a Stimos asuya lehiposach. It goes after a while in such a way that the Mekablim are able to be Misale and Misdachik in a way that they can become Kelim and they become Shachas to the Amshocha. And that's what we saw. It was called Machiv De'er Yoshua. Machiv De'er Choizer Husha Sosum Bi'etzem Va'ena B'china Shachas Ela Mekablim Klal. Because we saw that was a Machiv, that its Indian was Aliyah Viskalalis in the Mashpia himself, not Ayin for your reader to the Mekablim, nor such inyonim that were even of the Veikis and Aliyah Tomid in the Mashpia himself, and the Heipach Inyan Hagiloi. But that's we saw the Yoera Atzmi Houts, Mamish Kol in the Etzem, the Etzem Yoera Houts, Mamish Kol in the Etzem. We saw that the only way that can possibly be Nimshak, Im Beklal, it is Alidei Hamshocha Atzmias, that the Atzmis himself causes it to go forth from him. Because Bedachei, Beklale Hamshocha, it can't possibly be Nimshak. It's completely beyond any union of Gili to the Makabel. So if it does come, then it's in an even from Tona, Matan Baseisa. We compare it to the union of the Pasik Matan Baseisa. And that was the Makiv of Choizer, which even when he gives it, in the end, it's not Mamish B'Shaychas Ela Mekablim. No, this is a Chesed Elim, it's at the Mashpir that he decides to give it. Or, we saw when I get to Tishrei, and particularly to this Hamshocha, how it was, Mitzad Shchacha the Sukkah, we saw it can come Mitzad Tshuva Miyumke the Liba, which is also a Aveda in the Odom, which is Lagamri Shaloiba, and we discussed it at some length in last Shir. V'alpia now, Yuvan Mashin is Bur Liyu Perek Reish Daled, the Isav Esachol, well, that's the beginning of the last Maimah, the first Perek in the last Maimah. The Isav Esachokma Mibchinas Chokmas Timoa, or Mibchinas Cyrus Levon. V'hu Inyan, the Abo Yoinek Mimazlo. It's one on the lesson brought down in the Zohar, mover in many drushim, that Abba Chochma is yonek, a inifan yonike. It's not a inifan hamshocha bederach ishtauselas mamish, and not bederach ileva olo. No, it's a inifan yonike, meaning a nurturement or a taking of the hashpah, but not bederach mashpia mekabel in the usual way. So therefore, the Indian of the Amshocha of Chochma from Chochma Stimua has to be even of Cyrus. And we saw that the Indian from Cyrus, their Indian is Helem V'Chimtzul. But in Cyrus Gufa, there are two Oifanim. There's the Chitonius of the Cyrus, and they're Cyrus to the Indian of Al Chochma Stimua is Takia Amokia to Chochma, but that's seen in Chitonius, I guess, Arich, in other words, Chitonius Chochma Stimua. That's the union of the Cyrus, how the each hair is like a cholol al pi Kabbalah, and it'll become mashma say further in the Hemshech Habiyah, that each sayro is like a, how do you call it, like a bamboo, like a bamboo reed. It's a hollow. The chitonius of that is a thing which is matamtim or magbil. The pneumius is a which is kaviocha open. So in that open part of the pneumius, there can go Ayin atzmi. The atzmius can go. So Kumtei said, mitzad the pneumius is a certain symptom vashpoer legabi the chutz, legabi the mekablim. But hidden in that symptom is the chesed atzmi, but that symptom just makes like a how do you call it, a hollow through which the atzmi can go. Which means that on the one hand there's a certain symptom chitzoni, which is shot to a form of ishtalshalos, what that's abba yonik memazlo, and then there's a pneumius, which is mamisham shochas ha'etzem. And so, legabi the etzem, all that symptom of the chitzonius is done, it's just made like a pathway through which you can go, and that's what we call mavar or mavir. I'm shochas b'dor mavir, and that's what we're going to see as we go along. So we'll talk more about that as we go along. And this type of ma'avir is called a tzimtzum pnimi or tzimtzum ha'atzmi, where the atzmi himself just goes through like the of a funnel. If you got water here and you got water, you want it to go into a keli, a small keli, you pour it through the funnel. So the same water that was over there goes over here. It just goes, through the funnel, but it's not affected by the funnel at all. It just goes through the funnel.
It's not a real symptom.
So the sideways.
It's not really a symptom.
Oh yes, it is. Because if you try to pour the water in to that thin place without your thing, then you pour all over the place. If you ever been stuck on the road with your car and you try and pour the petrol, well, it's not going to. It'll just go all. No, it doesn't carry out the tachlis. Not just gets mispazer, even bilti rotzu. The same would happen if not the sayra. The same happens with a funnel. The funnel allows you to go exactly where you want to go, but with the etcher, and that's a chiddush of it. It's a tzimtzum, but it's a tzimtzum for the hoivah of the etcher. And so there's two inyanim in the sayra. So we'll see as we go along. But we're talking here that Abba Yonet Memazlo, the Gila of Chochmah. The Gila of Chochmah from the mazel of a noitza, of a noitzer, in this inyan we're talking here, is chitonius ador. It is kilo like a tzimtzum, which allows the inyan from Chochmah to go over. That's the tzimtzum of chitoni. That's kilo a tzimtzum, which is nimshach derech the etzem chitonius of the saya itself. And that brings the shefa from Chochmah Stimoa, mitzad Chitzoni Yusoi, into Chochmah. And that's called the inyan from Mazel V'noitzer. Now it's interesting, I must admit that I have to just be more of this little point, is it's interesting that in this whole area where we've met up with it a few times already, this inyan at the Mazel the Tikkun Azayin, which is called in the Yud Gimel Tchani Dikna, which is called Noitzer. The Rebbe calls it always with a vav here in this whole piece here, in this Kansa Hemshech. He calls it Mazel V'Noitzer, but it's not written in the pasuk the vav. Statement it's Noitzer Chesed, a lot of statements kavol. It's an interesting thing. I looked it up in some of the Mubalim. They all call it Mazel Noitzer Chesed. They call it Mazel Noitzer Chesed. And the Rebbe calls it here Mazel V'Noitzer with a vav. So it's interesting why he does that. Why doesn't he just call it Noitzer without a vav? Call it Noitzer Chesed, because that's the full terminology for that particular tikkun is Noitzer Chesed. That's the way they call it. They call it Noitzer Chesed. And the Rebbe calls it here V'Noitzer. In other words, maybe he calls it V'Noitzer Metavov to be meramis that there are other inyonim in it. It's kilo koilim in itself. inyonim atzmim, which are lamaila from what a mazel really is. Every good vinod. That's what I can think of. But the hefsher, if he push it mechoisa azman, I couldn't sort of really go into it. It's not really nagea. Go kach to the etzem hemshech had the beer here, but it's interesting. Also, he's when he's bar hakushi out there, and we asked the kash on that over there at the beginning of the Maimah of Sukkot. Sharei b'mazel v'noita. It occurs the whole way through this whole passage. He calls it mazel v'noita. Yeah, Meir. Well, I say remember that it's in the middle of the. It's not, it's not the first and it's not the last. It's like in a hemshah. Yeah, mazel v'noita. Meir b'chinas atzmis chokmas timoah. Lord, mazel v'noita had in itself also these two nuances, just like its mokeh atzmi, which is moichas timoah, has. In other words, that in the mazel itself, there's an inyan of shemen hatoiv. That shemen hatoiv, like it's written in the pasuk, kashemen hatoiv al harosh yered al zokan zakan aron, with the zokan adin inside it. Yeah. There's in the inyan of that mazel v'noitzer, b'tzad pnimiyusay, there's shemen hatoiv datika. We saw that in chokmas timoah, and not only in chokmas timoah atzmoi, but how he's nimshach into his sire already, how he's nimshach into his what you might call his tzinoya, through which he becomes nimshach. Now, in the tzinoya gufa, we find two inyonim. We find that there's a inyan from atik v'lochein hayud gimel tikuni dikno, but they are the yud gimel midas arachmim. Hein mokeh slicha. The inyan from slicha is a inyan l'mayla mikol madida vakbol. This is atik, was lay smaller b'hai atika, and therefore since lay smaller, it's only the inyan from pshitas atoiv, pshitas orachamim, more than toiv nor rachamim. Therefore it's inyan from slicha. Once you reach that madrega, then all the pagamim and all the inyanim are not only not toiv as mokim, but they reach the tikkun alidaisa. So as him came, and Bechlal the Yud Gimel Midas Arachmim, Bechlal Inyonim is the Inyan of Slicha. So if that's the case, in the tzina of Chochmas Timoah, there's already the kiloi of Atzmis Chochmas Timoah, which is Atik, then Eichu b'bchinas Mokeh l'Chochma. And yet on the other hand we say that Chochmas Timoah, being as it is already Chochma Da'arich, yeah, then it's already kilo chokhmah had shait of chitzenis akesa. Then it's already a mokir for chokhmah da'atzilas. When we say mokir, we're going to correct that slightly. Well, we've already corrected it. We've already said instead of cyrus. Cyrus is not the usual way of a mokir, but nonetheless, it's what we're going to call a mokir. We'll see as we go on. We're going to justify that we call it a mokir. It follows that chokhmah Timoah is a mokir b'derech, what we're going to call say the hishtalshelas, even though it's l'mayla k'tas mi hishtalshelas, to the inyan from chokhmah is an atzilas. And chokhmah is already a sphira gluya, and it's one of the esekoiches if we take the moshe in the efesh. So how can pnimius chokhmah Timoah, well, it's inyan is shemen hatui, well, that's the inyan from pnimius. Yeah, ha-kesa mamish, as if shemen inyon is that it's tough. Lamayla al gabi hamayim. Well, that's the mokir of all the inyon islicha churu rachamim mamish. How can that be a mokir to chokhmah? In other words, we seem to be playing on all sorts of different chasanas and different inyonim with this inyan from chokhmah Timoah. Wa inyan hu, said the Rebbe. Dehine haramaz. Pasha boy daf mem omet Beis kosa davar mazel v'noitzer yesh boy pnimis v'chitonier. Now it's actually quite a short piece in the Ramaz, But over there it's talking about the Inif and Yitzir. Boy deals big of Yitzir's Mitzrayim. There's a whole mufladik passage in the Zohar about the Inif and Chometz, and about how Chometz is Ma'aki of the Inif and Galas from Gula, and Daki the Inif and Gula's Bittel Kol Chometz, and Bittel Klippus Pare, and then there was the Inif. So it's very fascinating. It's interesting, just like we saw when I get to what the Dak brings over there. But Pasik said, well, that piece in the Ramaz is talking about Moshiach. That piece in the Ramaz is talking about Moshiach. And he says, the Giluim Ma'atzumim that there were, the Yitzir's Mitzrayim, he said that was all the Inif and Arich, it was all the Inif and the Giluim had a Klulim Amnam Ayin Seifla Maila Mia Asfiras, or how it's got some sort of shaykhs to say this house. So he got to the Shilamaila, we say this house. He said, Osid, Moshiach, he's going to be Mamish Pnimis Ati, come over in the Kisvei Arizah, or whatever. And he says that's the Inif from Pnimis Chochmas Timor. And he says, and he brings Chochmas Timor. And he says, you do it, Pnimis Chochmas Timor, Pnimis Atik, V'zu Matregas HaMoshiach. Yes, all of Nema, Nochal of this and this. And he says, that's the Inin, what Moshiach will be zecher to the Inin from Yechida. Aklali is, or that Inin, how in Chochmas Timor is Shoira and Miskala, the Inin from Atik, or does the Inin from Yechida Haklali? So and he said, V'zui Matregas Melech Moshiach. I say, state you find it many places in Ayin Beis. The whole of Ayin Beis, somehow or another, it's working towards this. I once, a few people asked me my opinion. I once said to some guys with the Beis Mashiach, they were during my interview and the whole thing. I said, if you take a careful look in the Ayin Beis, you see that most of the Inyonim in Ayin Beis are like a sort of a vua, klapi the Inyonim, how they're going to be liyosi. Even though at certain points you may not notice it so clearly, but if you look carefully into the Inyonim, you'll see it's all working in that direction. And we saw in the last part about the Inyonim, Ben Dovid, Boaz, Hes Chadaz, and everywhere you'll find it. Bukol, Amakim. You find that somehow or another it sort of links up with the and this whole Inif Halus Hashem Kol Goyim.
And the rest of Chassidus doesn't talk about
I agree with you. Yeah, but you're left after everywhere you look up you find about Mashiach. There's a lot of Inyanim. I agree with you. What you say is right. I mean the whole Inif the Gila is the Gila from Mashiach. And Chanami. Ayin, the Haramaz Pasha Boy Dafmem Omid Beis Kosa the Mazel Vanoitza. He doesn't write Mazel Vanoitza Matavov. I looked it up carefully. He writes the Mazel Noitzer Chesed, as they say to the Matavov. Interesting. Yesh Boy Pnimis Vechitzainias or Beteich Pnimi Yusay who Pnimis Atik. They say and that's the Inif for Nochal of the Inif for Melech HaMashiach. Well, now. So that's a kasha. It's if Chochmas Timor is really Pnimisatik, and that's the Madrega Pnimius of Chochmas Timor, then how can it be a mochi for Chochma how it already is in Atzilus? Well, in Atzilus, it's already a koyach, a sphera mugbelis, with the Indian from Chochma Gluya. With all the inyonim of what Chochmah is, and not Bina, and not Oid inyonim, of it, not Pnimis Atik. Pnimis Atik, Mamish, like you said, Gila Haslicho, but Haslicho is Lamaila Mikol. Akoich is Vasfira is Lamaila Mikol Medida Vakbola. So how can that be? So we didn't really answer the teretz yet. We just sort of went around with a whole beer. The in Chochmas Timor, these two madrigas. So that's going to help us out now to make the chilik. Ulafiha now, in the light of all that we said, after having asked that kasha, yesh loima de beklolos mazel v'noitel, meaning noitel chesed, v'chein kol hayud gimel tkuni dikno, all of the yud gimel is rachmim, hein mibchinas chochmas timor, He said not only Mazel Noitz and all of the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim, all of them are from Chochmas Timor, because they know Hanami. Chochmas Timor is Mislabesh Atik, Mish Atik, how is Pnimis Akesa? Rak, Sheyesh, Pozeh, Pnimis Vechitainiyas. In Chochmas Timor Gufa, there are the Indian from Pnimis Vechitainiyas, and the Pnimis Vechitainiyas are not Stam Pnimis Vechitainiyas. This is Mamish in Madregis Makifim, and Madregis Makifim Halashat to the Mashpia, to the Etzemina from Alakus Arts Mudal. But in that Gufa we found two Hanim Shocho, Nim Shochim mi Beis Amadregis, Shebechochma Stimosh and his Buil and his Baru Lil. In other words, we just spoke about the Makif of the Yoshua. The Makif mitzad the Mashpia, how he's got a shaykhs to the Makablim, and the Makif of El Choiza. In other words, those two Makifim in Chochmas Timor, they are the two in Yonim, and we're going to have to be Machalik Beinayim, but they get to the Kushia. In other words, Einochanami, the Moki of Ashurish, how Chochmas Timor is a Moki of Ashurish to Chochma Datzilus, the Chochma Gluya, is through the Indian of the Machif to Yoshua. In other words, Al Chochmas Timor, despite the fact that she's moved out, she does have a shaykhs to the Makablim, and eventually they can somehow or another be shy to that Shefa. Well, that's the way that Chochmas Timor is a Mokeh, albeit not a normal Mokeh in inverted commas. It's through Cyrus, as we're soon going to see. Or so it's a Indian for Nishtaushlas. Well, that's the Indian of how Chochmas Timor is a Mokeh to Chochma Gluya. But the other Indian in Chochmas Timor, that it's in is Mamish Pnimisatik, or the Indian of the Gilui Deliosid, V'chulu, Kemuvah Dot in the Ramaz, well, that's the other Madrega. That's the Madrega HaBeis. The Chitzenius, the Mazel Venaitzer, who means Chitzenius Chochmas Timor, she means Mokeh LaChochma. Or the Chitzenius of that, even in the Tzinoya itself, but that's Mazel, Venaitzer, or Mazel, how we will call it. Who means Chitzenius Chochmas Timor, she means Mokeh LaChochma, Dahainu, or that Makif, albeit it's a Makif. It's a Makif of Voyor Yoshua, which eventually becomes Mizkala to the Makabel. In other words, through the Indian from Cyrus, there can be a Makabel, and that's Indian from Chochma Datzilus, or Chochma, how it is in Nefesh. Ubchinas HaPnimius the Mazel Vanoitzer, Hu Shenimshim Ubchinas Pnimius the Chochmas Timor, Shesosum Be'etzem Kemoi Atzmias Atik. In other words, we're not talking stam about Atik, but we're talking about Atzmias Atik. That's also a diktuk. L'chera yesh b'se Indian Masuyam, what he says, that's not just stam Atik, but it's Atzmias Atik. That's the Indian of the Erasosum Be'etzem from the Mekablim. Mishom Nimshach Gam Kein Moichin, now, when we say moichin, we mean already a hashpoah, which is shy to makablim. Ela, we're going to see, just like we saw, that the oifen, that can be nimshach, dafke alidei nosina, matan b'seisa. So therefore the Rebbe says that if that is nimshach, it can be nimshach in a way that it can eventually come into the seder, what we call ishtalshalas, and those arrogance which are in the seder of ishtalshalas, they'll be able to be makabel, it'll be nimshach lafi kilo seder shalahem, but really it'll be lagamri shaloi lafi seder shalahem. It'll really be a nasina atzmiyas shalamayla mi kol medida v'hagbola. But that lechora is once again a remez to liosi, because that's what's going to be liosi. But the atzmiyas of atik will be nimshach tafki b'apnim. In other words, ultimately speaking, all of the great makifim in Yonah Mesokos Sofla he Moshe Derech HaPnimiyas. So we can say that Chochmas Timor, Moichas Timor is like the Nakuda Atzmiyas, for which all of these inyonim are gonna, one way or another, be Mizgala and Mishtausel, to use the word Mishtausel Liyotzi. there's going to have to be some point where all the inyonim atzmiyim are going to have to be nimshach b'derech pnimiyah. So the Rebbe says kwa yesh dorach hazeh, but it's not ishtaushelas, and yet it's going to be derech ishtaushelas, and it's even l'mayla from the mokir of the rotzen, but chila klolos habriyah. It's a new type of in, like we saw chodosh, but it's going to be in the seder of the inyan ishtaushelas. That's like how do you call it, a prelude. It's like a forespace of what we're going to see here. So once again, we seem to be hitting on something very arch-mystic here. We're saying that moiches timor, to quote its Kabbalistic name, it's like a nekuda merkozis for atzmias in the whole, what you might call, amazing trick which is going to occur when there's going to be the nesina of the atzmias. And then that nesina is going to be davke b'opnimi. It's going to davke come into the Mekablim. How's that child? Ki kvar yesh dorach hazeh. It's already working to a certain extent, even without the Gilu of Mashiach. It's working in a what you might call in a hidden way, mamish b'goloi, in the inyan of this whole Hamshocha through Nimias, moiches timor. All as we call moicha, so-called moiches timor. It's going to somehow or another bring everything into ishtaushelas in a way that it's called moichin. Yes, nimshach mebchinas moichin. It's nimshach moichin. El sheim moichin gevoyim v'nailim b'yoisa. In other words, that the ashpaz liosid are going to be in such a way that they will be to the mekablim. But even like the Rambam says, shelo ya'ishik kol ha'olam kule ela lo das boirom. In other words, it's not that you're not going to be able to, you're going to be busy. How do you say? You're going to have what to keep you occupied. Even though they're going to be running around after the few bucks, and so on and so forth. But you're going to be busy and occupied. Yeah, but in the which are shy to you, they're going to come into your seder, what that's in you for moichin. They're going to be moichin gevoyim v'nailim b'yois, completely and utterly beyond the whole normal seder. That's what he said here, that Achmias Atik. That was much more, maybe even in the other Seder, there's also a little bit of Atik, but not Achmias Atik. Even though we said that the other Seder is only Siders, but that's Lachera, Ayin for the Chitzanias. Well, that's also a remes that in all of these inyonim, which are Bederach, Lamailami Seder, Stalsus Kitzas, actually, there's always a certain trace at a pinimias for him, and that's what you remember we had in not the last year, but the year before that. Yeah, we had that he brought down with his the political laws. You remember we had been again to the kav. We said that the kav is nimshel lechad from the kav is a kav kotza, kav it's even from mugbal, it changes it's already the had shatag bola, v'chuli. So we said emes over this nimshel in the kav mioer sheni salem. That's not the pnimis of the kav. That's the chitzenis of the kav. It's in the kav. Kamoishu, that's what you might call a functioning entity. That's what the kav does in inverted commas. Its normal task is in them. There's always a trace of the urge in the salim. So we could say that even in this whole Indian where Yosha, even in the Seder which is Shaitish Taushalas, even though we're saying that that's not Atik, that's only Dina van Arich, and that's only the Chitzenius of the Saira. But nonetheless, in them good, there's always a certain episode also from the Ha'in Arich, also gets Nimsha, which means that there's always a certain Nasinas Koyach in any Amshocha, which comes B'derech Amitias, B'derech HaKavod Amitias, which carries in itself a certain trace of the Pnimius Hanishor, which is not Nimshah. And therefore he is medactic that it says, Shesosabet, excuse me, that's going to be Nimshah, and what's going to be Nimshah? Achmias Atik, not just Tamat, Achmias. In the other way, there's also a certain trace of Atik, of a Nishmamish Achmias, and those are the Inifan. So it's hard to know the Dukya Lashenis and אולי יש להם בדרך כלל שמכונת ישראל. אחרפונים, זה sicher the kavona, the klal is bederach zu. Va'inenu, so the Rebbe said, Va'inenu Yuvan, we're going to go now, Im Kain, so we got that's the territory, we got two madrigas, Chochmas Timoa, Mitzad HaMachiv Doer, Yoshua boy, then he's a Machit to Chochma. Albeit it's derech Cyrus, but it's already a Machit LeChochma. Ve'ilu, that what the Ramah says, that the Indian Chochmas to Mamish Pnimis Atik, she's Galileosi, others, Machiv Doer Choyse, that's the immediate. Amashpir how he is in Chochmas Timor Mitzarat. Va'inin Yuvan al pi mashkosu b'moki macher. I see that both of them so are really shy to that they're really shy to be mishkala to the Mekabel. Va'inin Yuvan al pi mashkosu b'moki macher sheyesh b'chinas hamshocha shebasei di shtaucheles v'yesh hamshocha habor mimokim gavoya meyoid. Comes from very, very high madriga. L'mayla misayda ha'ishtaucheles v'hakel hu p'chinas pnimi. And nonetheless, yeah, it's also a pnimi. In other words, not a makim. In other words, we're dealing now with the Zolcha Inyonim, well, we might say that makifim is not our deal. Makifim is not our Indian here. We're dealing with the Shroshim called Kakavoyim, she Bichelto, maybe we could say it that way. Mitzad the tremendous mire that they have is Inyonim Atzmiyim, and there's so much shy to Atzmiyusai, ki Atzmiyus Atik is das ist doch mamish Bechina Tachtoine Shabamazel, das ist doch mamish the Eibest himself, Kaviochel. Amamira dort where he is, dort is Pnimis Kavanosai. That's the Yemas Kavona. Was you will Mahu Rote. And we can say that in that Madrega was his Emes Achmius Atik, it taught Herzog what's the ultimate Kavona, what's the ultimate purpose. The ultimate purpose that everything has to be given, but there are Pnimi. And a far there's a Inem which Lamaila Legamri Misayde Ishtaucheles, Mitzad Shorshai, but he's also going to be Nimshach Dercha Ishtaucheles. Amira, that's the difference. The Chochmas Timor, how he's a mocked to Chochma Gluya, is a form of Ishtaucheles. He's going to have to correct it slightly, but he's going to say it's a form of Ishtaucheles. And the Ilu, yeah, Chochmas Timor, how he is Mitzad Atzmius Atik, but it's Lamaila Mi Ishtaucheles, Legamri, Mitzad Shorshai. Mitzad the oil be etzim, there's a gavoya merid, and after became that's going to come darker. Yeah, but even so, pnim, it's going to be nimshach to the mekablim, and therefore use the expression moichin, and it's going to be moichin, gavoyim, nailim biyois, very, very high and very elevated biyois. Ayin said the Rebbe. He said that means to say that the Seder Vadroga of Seder Ishtaucheles, whom ya Chochma da Atzilut, Ishtaucheles Mamish, the Chor begins with Chochma. So on, Reishis Ishtaucheles is Chochma. Chochma da Atzilut, Lebina, Bina Lazor, yeah, from Bina into Zor, and all of that is Bederach Ilava Olo, in other words, Mamish Asayda Masuda of Ishtaucheles, the Chitanias. The Penimis Sheba Elyain becomes Amokia Latachte. Rather, I'm sorry, the other way. Chitanias Sheba Elyain becomes Penimis Latachte. But the whole clothing that we haven't been to get to Ilava Olo. For who Inyan Ishtaucheles has Sphirais Besfirais Atzma. If familiar with that expression occurs in Tanya over there in the Yuva Chayer Chad in Simon in Geras HaKodesh, the famous chapter 20. But over there he begins by saying that you got what he calls the union from Shtaucheles Hasphirais Besfirais Atzma. In other words, that they're Mishtauchel one from the other. But the Sphirais excepting for the union from Malchus. Malchus sorry not, he's Maramas over there. But Malchus is not Amishain from Ishtaucheles. Ishtaushelis, but we'll see that the Gabi Klolis are moving from Ishtaushelis compared to the Malam Ishtaushelis, then maybe even that can be described as Ishtaushelis. So he says, "Ruin in Ishtaushelis Sfira b'Sfiras Atzmon, Shehem b'Bchinas Yilava." Now the truth is, he's soon going to say that in that itself, there are two Ifanim from Eliva Olo. So we'll soon see about that in a second. We've already learned that earlier in the Hebshah. Agam, where are we? V'gam, he said, Masha Chochma. Oh, so okay. So I mean, we could say that's brought down here, but Kitza, because this is moving and Mavur. Dai tzorche, as you might say, b'harbe mekemes. Chochma and bina ilevol and bina and midas ilevol and in the midas guva ilevol. Even though you can always time that they're not mamish ilevol, but yet they are. It depends, which angle you look at it. But our Indian here, how each one is much pure to the other, then it's enough for that to call it Iliva Olu, meaning that it's an Indian how each one has got an erech or kiruva to the other, and that's what we call Ishtaushelis. So now says the Rebbe, well, that all makes sense in the Sfiras Atzmon. Dainu, that's the bitu, that's the Dicholoshim, Sfiras b'Sfiras Atzmon. But what about Keser me? What about Chochma mi Keser? So, emes mitzad chitzonius ha'inyonim, then Keser is also a Sfira. The famous diuk is there. Sometimes Keser is nimnim, sometimes Keser inanim. So the beer is that mitzad chitzonius Sfiras, and Keser, Daino Arich, is one of the, it's Reish HaNetzolim, it's one of the Sfiras. Mitzad pnimius ha'inin and Atik is moved up. And then we said that Keser is not one of the Eser Sfiras. But maybe the diuk is that Abolis HaChochma mi Keser is here Ayin Shel Ishtaushelis, because we're saying that we're talking here mitzad Chitzonius Advarim Ayin Kol Ishtaushelis, and that's the diuk, and like it's a sort of a sub kashet b'toich ha'inyan that l'chera Chochma gets from Keser derech Cyrus, and here we come to the whole idea of Cyrus. We're going to see they can have in themselves a from the Chitzonius, and then ultimately they can have in themselves a from the Pnimius, God. So he says, and that's Kil B'Tmiyah. That's Kil B'Tmiyah Mesiyamas. And that's what he says. Agam de Kabbalas HaChochma Mi'akeser Hu Rak Mivchinas Cyrus. The Arich Anpin, the Abba Yenek Mimazlo. We started off the whole beer. The Abba is Yenek from Mazel, and Mazel V'Neitzer, or Mazel Neitzer Chesed. From there, that's where Chochma. And so we saw that that's Ayin for Chitzonius. That's the way that Chochma Stimoya is a mocker to Chochma through this whole union of Yenek Mimazlo. In other words, Yoinek Mimazlo is not Ishtaushelis. Even if in the unique Derech Cyrus is not Mamish Ishtaushelis. So it says that nonetheless we can include it in the general picture of Ishtaushelis. And that's quite a beautiful here. And that's what he says. Well, that Indian from Chochma, Mi'akeser, is also Ishtaushelis. Hagam, that's like a kasha b'toich ha'inyan. The Kabbalas HaChochma Mi'akeser rak mivchinas Cyrus. The Arichanpin, the Abba Yonim Mimazlo. Sha'Cyrus, hu rak moiserei moichim. U'mizeh levod nimshach b'chochma bina. V'loi, Mi'akeser atzmoi mamish. V'im kein, ena kemoi me'achochma labina, o me'abina lamidas. Sha'atzmis HaChochma nimshach ha'mislavish ba'bina. V'chein me'bina la. In other words, they were now building the kasha, and that was what we said. It's like a kasha pnimit b'toich ha'biyur. How can you say that Kabbalas HaChochma mi'akeser hagam, that we seem to be implying that that's also Ishtaushelis? How can you say that? Because l'chera de Amshocha, Cyrus is only in for moisery, moiserim lavad, moiseries, Ve'ilu emasa hishtaushlus is where one in is mamish mashpia b'derech pnimi or mislavish in the tweede. Like we know that in the Olam, the Madrega Elyoina, albeit Alidei Yerida, albeit Alidei Chitzoini Shaboy, or Beis mamish mislavish in the Madrega Taktoina. Ve'ilu in Asayres we call it moisreis, moisrei moichin levad. And that's what goes into the Chokhmah and Bamela into Bina. V'lo yakesa atzmei. And when we say lo yakesa atzmei, not even a law bechina of the kesa how he is kesa atzmei, not only in from moiseres bilvat. So so im kain ena k'mayim Chokhmah le Bina. It's not like normal ishtaushlas. What in normal ishtaushlas atzmei so Chokhmah nimshach mislavish babina v'chein mibina le midas shaharei. How do I know that Atzmi is a Chokhmah, Atzmi is a Bina, is Nimshach in the midas, but he is Bina and Saseichel Lui Leidus Amidas. Ki im alidei is born in the Stavke. Shekein hu b'midas tetikun. That's how it is in midas tetikun. In midas tetuyu, everything can fly around, how they call it. The famous expression is a tuyu dikamench. So it could be ichaptir and ichaptir of a mitzadelo matikun, unless there's mamisha islabshus of moichin in the midas, ein Indian shall gilu hamidas how it should be, and an eifel from amitius is galas of the midas. V'im kein hari b'midas yesh bohem min ha'seichel. In the Indian from midas, there's mamisha Indian from seichel, and then he's going to correct the Rabbi in the brackets that that's only a ha'ora, or it's a ha'ora atzmiyas. It's not a ha'ora like in the Indian of Sidus. What there we call it moiserei. In other words, it's also moichin, but it's moiserei moi. Albeit that the Indian from moichin out is in keser is moving it. That's moichin gedolim v'dakim b'yisa. Nonetheless, we call it moiserous bilvad. Now, what's in it for moiserous? Moiserous is like Indian of leftovers. Ve'ilu michochma lebina, or bina lemidas for sure. That's only a ha'ora. Is well known. What actually enters the midas, what we call a bechain. Or you can't call the bechain moiserous bilvad. The bechain is mamish agilu of the moichin bekitzer. Or even shall tzimtzum that the midah should be able to hear what's my will for him, as you might say. The midah is able to chap what is the kivun, and we say a gateman. Because the midah is a balawachi there. The whole thing from the moichin is to touch them all. So remember, we touch them all for a day, a short message of a rosati amiti sinin from the whole noise of these bonanas. Mashiach in moiserus is much, it's just a sort of a leftover bilvad. But derech ha'avoida, it's one on the Indian from moiserei moichin. Can even fall into a Indian from chitzenius that a person can think that he's doing certain inyanim, and that his understanding and his chokhmah, that can be poil in the Indian of Gashmis and not birchas Hashem. He thinks that it's Ayin chokhmah, Ayin how do you call it, hamtzoes, that they are what bringing him the panas and such. But down that's Indian from moiserei bilvad. There's a nicht emes moichin. There's like a leftover from the moichin, which tell him that it was a trick, it was an idea, it was this, it was that, and there seems to be a certain connection between that and meiser. For what? Because it's not really a dova amiti, it's a moichin, it's a min leftover. Therefore, there can be a toas, you can be medamadat to the to Akesha with the ultimate shefa. I can think that they have as Akesha. Ve'ilu, the immediate shefa is a bilchas savaya hita ashir, and they had to be the eitzah man. It was a kli be'emta. What was Vinsky is all special, because too many kalim is not good. There's a famous spear from the Talmud Tzedek in where is it? In Tiglachas. Nausea dort in if you have too many kalim, too many ideas, it's like having a long bag. It gets in your way and you fall over. You trip over your own trousers, to use the expression. And that's the Indian from moiserei moichin. There's too many ideas, too many chokhmah, too many things that they fall. Remember, they can even lead you in a wrong. That's b'derech avodah. So Cholila, the man from Kesed to Chochma, it's not Cholila that's going to fall in the wrong direction. But Inyanim, what Ayin Bohem Gilui Amiti is, from the meaning from Kesed, since that's Ayin Seif, Mamish and Hazayim, so it gives rise to a new start with the Sini from Chochma. It looks like a new inning with the story, how the Moishan become Mugbal in the form of an Akuda, with the whole inning from Chochma, with the ganze. Yeah, Arif is, well, that's a concept of moisteries. In other words, not a gilui pnimi and not a gilui atzmi. Even that it's only chitoinius, kimat ba'oiv chief shel ha'hakir as a pnimi. Well, that's even a leftover, a moister. And remember, it's a very drastic drop. Mashin kinini from the koiches, from Bina into Midas, it's a inifan. Bechein, or be it ha'ora, or be in dem bechein, leaked begolui, the whole atzmi, so it's what we call a ha'ora atzmi. That's what he puts to Berkeley, makes at this point, the tikkur. And so we'll see more about that as we go on. I have to ask your forgiveness, I've got to meet somebody in my office, so that's the inyan. We'll see as we go along here. The Ayin, which comes mamish from Pnimisatik into Ishtaus. And that's already a preparation for us. And if you get that far, that's really the Amshocha from the Yossi. They stay taught in the Ramad. We're going to see it's got to do with the Ketores. What's Tomatini from the Ketores? Ketores is a good Hechatak. The Rashbi, Chad Ketira. And it's a very interesting Rashi. Take a look in last week's Siddur, Rashi by the Akeda. Rashi brings Velech Lechol Eretz HaMoiriyo. Eretz HaMoiriyo. Rashi brings it. He brings it. That's in from Yerushalayim. It's in Beis Hamidrash should be Yerushalayim. Yeah, and he brings Shemisham Teitza Heroa Liyasor. The first called Moria. The Onkelos Tirgem. Moria al Shema Ketores. Keep it quick. The uncle is Tirgum. The Moria al Shema Ketores. Mi Ikrei. Those in the Ketores is Moya. So therefore, the whole Ketores is called al Shema Moya. The Yerushalayim is Moria al Shema Ketores. Before Russia, was fought on Jerusalem with Ketores. It's called the whole. It's called al Shema Ketores. The ganze Beis Hamikdash is al Shema Ketores. And that's what he's going to talk about here. So he's going to get to this whole inyan. The Amshach Atzmi is in the Shtaus is Ketores. Good. All right, guys. So have a good evening. And this is the Rashbi. The Chad Ketores Katan.
Yeah, no.
What it means is no. I got to talk what he says. He doesn't say Yad Masai anymore. When we call out Yad Masai, he just says no. Yeah. Okay. Go to.